Chapter 11. Mother and Daughter. Bianca finished her incantation and there suddenly appeared, on top of Moss's spread-eagled body, a figure. It was dressed in the same dark tunic and grey cloak that Moss wore, but had the pale features of Bianca. She immediately rolled to one side, every muscle taut, eyes somewhere between crazed and wary. After a brief look she ducked again behind Bianca, hands near her throat. Once more a quick survey, and then she leapt, back against the overhang, crouched in a defensive posture. Moss continued to writhe and scream. Bianca stood stock still during this, watching. After a few jumps and twitches, the woman grew calmer. She stepped from the rock, and a surge of magical energy flew from her fingers, engulfing Moss. When it faded he was locked completely inside faceted blue crystal. She stepped over to him and examined him, visually and magically, from head to toe. When she finished she turned to Bianca.
"Mother,"
said Bianca. Gotha nodded. Her face was as pale as Bianca's but with additional lines and wrinkles. Her hair was not so much pale, as colorless. The stoic, wary expression she held her daughter with was the same.
"The war proceeds apace. The oath has been successful removing fighters permanently from their ranks, but not stopping them committing magical atrocities. We repair as far as the strategic mana reserve allows."
There was no reaction.
"We've approved 30 mages in the Academy for Biblica Hexapla study. Lily discovered an ideal form that can amplify and focus mana. Jacques' multiplexer has been deployed in artifact creation and 2 more armies have full equipment."
Again, Gotha gave no evidence she heard.
"My own studies of the Avatar project have had difficulties. My attempts to operate it were aborted due to excessive stress on my soul. Curiously wild fluctuations in will were observed in the construct before they fully drew my soul back from it. The cause is unknown but will almost certainly complicate things."
"Have there been any further Grey Elf encounters?"
asked Gotha brusquely.
"No,"
said Bianca. She snorted and gazed at the surroundings.
"Moss's progress."
Bianca looked around as well.
"He did this in a minute with 1 or 2 ergs of mana. He says the growth is self-sustaining, but not the expansion without additional mana."
Bianca followed the older woman's gaze to the horizon.
"We can use the vortices for power, but they will perturb the results. Tell him I think he has made enough progress with this to try that power source and see if it is a viable approach,"
she said.
"We could use your help,"
said Bianca.
"His work is more important,"
said Gotha. Bianca raised an eyebrow.
"I believe that the emancipation of all souls from the gods is in Swan's interest."
"He has not been clear,"
said Bianca.
"He is also not the only Grey Elf.
The rest consider us a failed experiment."
"And bringing every dead person who has ever lived back to life will make us successful?"
asked Bianca, critically.
"Swan has been vague in the extreme."
Gotha fixed her with a stare.
"The first cataclysm was an expected result of the experiment. As a direct reaction to that, the 144 set themselves up as the gods. Reincarnation ceased to be the norm. Souls passed on to the domain the gods had set apart for themselves to be accumulated like gaming chips. There are 2 significant results of this. Firstly, the number of souls in existence is no longer zero-sum. Children continue to be born, and they all have new souls, instead of reincarnated ones. Secondly, mana is generated by will from a soul. So the total mana that humanity has at its disposal has been increasing."
"Elves still reincarnate,"
said Bianca. Gotha shrugged.
"When I asked, Swan said something that might translate as diversity is good for the system. It is a mystery to be solved later."
She sighed and watched the vortex.
"If all the souls the gods have been accumulating for the last 2000 years were released, and their mana used for the strategic mana reserve, rather than brewing ambrosia, the estimated potential dwarfs even the largest vortex we've measured."
They have not approved enhancing the soldier's kit to contribute to the reserve,
said Bianca. Godha scowled at her.
And there are those who advocate returning the entire system to one where reincarnation is the norm.
Godha snorted.
Devonshire.
Bianca nodded.
She needs to be persuaded,
said Godha and looked at Bianca meaningfully.
We cannot win against the gods without the avatars,
said Bianca. Godha shook her head.
The people of our tribe killed their gods centuries ago. They did not even have new magic.
And look where they are today. Primitive barbarians living in the cold wastes.
Godha inclined her head.
The book of creation was written by the Grey Elves. It is the clearest statement we have of their intents.
Such as it is,
said Godha dryly.
It is not clear they wrote it for us, or even led us to it. It was found in a vault of some long-dead mage. We inherited the avatars we have from the same source. We do not even understand the book well enough to recreate what that person did. Not even with new magic.
Given the complex interactions it generates between soul, will, and animus, we stand to learn much by investigating it,
said Bianca.
I agree that the results may have potential elsewhere, but I do not think it is profitable as a primary course.
They stared at each other for a long while.
You will not return with me?
asked Bianca. Godha shook her head.
Then I will go now.
With a wave of her hands she disappeared. Godha looked down for a while at Moss, static in his blue crystal shell. She gazed around at the new growth inside. She paced up and down for a while, limbering up. Bringing her hands together in a sudden clap, there was a surge of energy and the blue crystal shattered. Moss was released and she had disappeared.